The legal industry hasn't changed. It's one of the most corrupt systems in the United States. It's all hourly. The lawyers can do what they want. They can sue for anything. You have to pay to defend it. We're off the American rule versus the English rule of law. You want to talk about disruption? That industry needs to be disrupted. LegalZoom tried to come out and do it. Didn't happen. You talk about it privately. We talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. I'm your host, Twiggy, along with crazy Uncle Keith.
Yes, sir.
Hey, my friend, we had a good one today. So we brought on Nick and Steven. You can hear all their backgrounds in the pod, but basically I called Debra Kamin's podcast at the New York Times utter garbage. They called me out. We had a big debate about the industry, and I thought, you know what? Let's just bring this into a podcast and have a big, thoughtful conversation about our industry. So
yes, the hot garbage debate. It was fun. It was actually really good to have two people who have strong opinions, and we didn't agree on everything, but I love that it was a conversation where people didn't agree on everything, and no name calling had to happen. Like, we all just shared, and I think we found some consensus in areas in which we weren't. We debated the industry, full service versus not full service, viewpoints on the pace of change, steering, self-represented buyers, why buyers don't even need an agent. And then, of course, we talked a little bit about the Debra Kamin podcast and thoughts on that. Journalism. So it was wide-ranging,
yes,
and a really, really fun debate. I think we should do more debate shows.
I think we're going to. It's going to be the start of a debate series we'll probably end up doing. So
love it. Put it in your ears, kids. You're going to dig it.
Welcome to the show, gentlemen. We are excited to have you on. I hope I don't get buried on this show today.
You might.
I might. For perspective, so Steven, Nick, and I met on LinkedIn. I wrote a very short opinion about Debra Kamin's podcast interview. I basically said, I think, gentlemen, I called it garbage or something. And you will both...
A really fair and balanced, thoughtful approach to expressing yourself.
I was running in between airports, in fairness. I know. And I wrote a very quick thing, and I did not follow it up. And these gentlemen held me accountable to the fact I did not express my opinions as to why. And that's totally fair. I started to write it out, and after 7 points and 2 pages on LinkedIn, I was like, you know what? We should just do a podcast.
Let's just do a podcast.
Talk about
Let's
this.
do it into a microphone.
I like it. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you. I guess let's start real quick so that our viewers and listeners just know who you are. Just a quick background, and we'll start with you, Nick, and we'll go to you, Steven, and then we'll jump into the meat of the conversation and debates today. So, all right, start us out there, Nick.
Yeah, I'm Nick, and hot on the heels of the NAR Settlement, I started making a transition in my business of going from traditional solo agent to consumer educator. And now I'm the one who is teaching home buyers how to purchase a home without using a real estate agent over at the DIY Homebuyer Academy.
So I bet you're super popular at MLS functions.
The one that everyone wants to talk to me. They just don't have the kindest things to say.
Just privately and where no one else can see. Yeah, got it.
Yes.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
All right, Steven?
Yes. Well, I'm usually in the back of the room with Nick, then back there talking in the corner so at those same parties. But Steve Koleno, CEO of OnAgent, which was a newer startup. Broker agnostic startup, was created to be an agent accelerator. And then recently, based on conversations we got into a couple of weeks ago, I've changed my focus now. But I've been licensed for many years, started off as an investor. That's how I had my license. Then I ended up getting into some of the largest institutional type rental companies. So I used to be vice president of American Homes for Rent, used to work for a division of Blackstone that spun off into Invitation Homes. So I've got this background that is used to doing a lot of volume. And I carried that volume into my career when I quit my corporate job at the age of 47 in 2017 and wanted to do things different because I wanted to be a top agent, and everyone was telling you door knocking, cold calling. And I'm like, how do you be a top agent, like top 10 agent doing that? So I went a different direction. And right now I'm licensed in 13 states, work for 6 different brokerages. I'm very broker agnostic, not tied to one broker, and always have been since 2019, consumer centric, consumer focused, 100%. Just been very quiet because I'm actively doing thousands of listings every year. So,
wow.
But that's it. We'll get into some of that. But
yeah. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for being here. And I want to say that, this isn't for the viewers and listeners. None of our shows are ever scripted. We have a few talking points, but this is going to be just much more of an open, conversation. We're trying to diversify some of our content, and also we want to get varying opinions. Keith and I have had a lot of industry players, and we're going to continue to do that. But we also want to get different perspectives about the industry on the show, and so this is going to be one of those sort of first episodes in that direction. So I'll start by eating a little bit of crow. I made the post about Debra. I am not shy about 2 things just to add into this. I live and am married to a reporter, investigative reporter for CBS. So for me, journalism is a much deeper conversation in my household. There's probably some bias against Debra because I don't feel like, and neither do a lot of journalists, feel like she actually does her job correctly. And so I posted on there after listening to the podcast, there was a significant amount of inaccuracies in it. And as I mentioned, these gentlemen held me accountable to expressing some of those pieces. I want to start there before we dive off into some of these other things. Where do you guys feel like where I went wrong or didn't give enough credit or skipped over things? I think is where our conversation was kind of moving towards. Because I think that might be a good lead into a lot of the other opinions you guys have about other aspects of our business. And either one of you can go first on this.
And we'll link to that post in the show notes in case anyone wants to see the post that's the origin story for this conversation. We'll put it in the show notes. Good comment,
Keith. So I did put like 7 different things before I stopped and was like, this is just going to take too long.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, the focus of her piece, right, was that she's highlighting the great real estate workaround and talking about all of the expectations that both consumers and, frankly, industry insiders had of what the NAR settlement was going to result in, which would be these big dramatic changes in how agents were compensated and giving power back to consumers. And the focus of the episode was really the NAR settlement didn't change much. Mm-hmm. And rather than talk about why it felt like all of the air got popped out of that balloon and there was all of this news and money spent on a huge settlement and no changes, and talk about, well, why is that upsetting to consumers? Why did this become the #1 podcast in the United States that week when it went live? It immediately felt like the conversation went towards protecting the status quo, ad hominem attacks against Debra, against the Times. I don't think any of us are on here to defend the Times. They don't need us to do that. But
a little bit they do. But go ahead.
Fair. But it felt like, and it wasn't just your post, it was on almost that same day. And I know this wasn't coordinated, but it felt like that same day, nearly every real estate coach, CEO, personality with a platform said about the exact same thing of this is hot garbage. This is to be disregarded. And it was like, shit, the industry is missing yet another opportunity to talk about what consumers are really feeling in the marketplace. And instead, we're just boxing our ears, covering it up, not wanting to actually discuss real issues that consumers are facing.
Let me ask you this. So, because I'm guilty of that, right? My problem is that there are real issues, and we'll get into these things, and I think we're going to find some common ground. I know Keith and I tend to be a little more extreme in the fact we do believe that there are changes that need to happen in our industry, and sometimes they aren't popular amongst our peers when we say it. Mm-hmm. My problem is that as a named defendant who went through the litigation, have been through the court documents and the arguments and the mediation, et cetera, is that this change that was hyped by the press and Wall Street analysts who candidly don't know a lot about how the business actually operates was hyped up into being this massive, I mean, you saw the headlines, most fundamental change in the history of residential real estate, all the stuff that we saw. this thing about 6% commissions, which I've been in literally this industry, Nick, my entire life. The last time the average commission rate in the United States was above 6% was 1991. And so where I think the industry, I'm talking my industry hat right now, I think where the industry gets upset is the lack of factual information that's being shared and then sensationalized into being something more than what it is. We'll talk about compensation and separating it and all of those things, as we're going to find a lot of agreement there. But I was out there for 2 years going, you all don't understand how the American consumer operates today. In my take on it was that if we are going to separate compensation, which I was a fan of and have been, you won't find any debate here on that, by the way. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, most home buyers, and you can tell me otherwise, Nick, most home buyers that I'm aware of don't want to go into the transaction they're going to do 1, 2, maybe 3 times in their life without some type of representation to help them through that process. And with the cost of housing doubling over the past 10 years, I don't see how they can afford representation and yet buy a house at the same time. And so the seller was always going to have to come up with some type of concession to make it work. Like for those of us in the industry, we're like, there might be some small percentage, but it was always going to be some version of what it is today to some degree. It's just a matter of how that money transferred. Am I off?
From the consumer perspective, so as I talk with a lot of home buyers, like what they were really expecting was that they would have more control over that conversation with their agent and be able to actually negotiate a different rate, or perhaps that new models would emerge for home buyers. And instead, what they have found is because of these workarounds from the NAR rules that came out of the settlement, they are being cut at the knees in their opportunity to actually negotiate services or to pick the services that they really want from agents. And so, I mean, that's really where I think a lot of the conversation still is.
Can you unpack how? Like, what do you mean by that?
So when sellers are still making upfront offers of compensation, which most listing agents are still encouraging their sellers to do. From what you're saying is right, James, and that most home buyers don't have the cash to pay a 2 to 3% commission to a buyer's agent on top of all of the other expenses that they have when buying a home. Mm-hmm. And so listing agents leverage that to tell the sellers that, hey, if you don't make an offer of compensation, a buyer's not going to be able to afford an agent, and they're probably going to skip your home. So then we start to get into this whole issue of potential steering, these upfront offers of compensation. But then when you have a listing agent recommend to the seller, well, in our area, most buyer agents expect whatever, X%, then it kind of does fix a standard compensation that most agents can reasonably expect a seller will be willing to offer in a market. So then when they go and negotiate with a buyer, they feel pretty confident that, hey, this is what most sellers are willing to offer. They're able to communicate that to the buyer in a buyer agency agreement conversation and say that, you know, most sellers, they'll give me this percentage. And so therefore that's what my rate is. And it really takes the wind out of the sails for the buyer to be able to say, well, I actually only want to do half of that, or I want to do a flat fee, because the buyer agent, they don't feel like they really need to negotiate. And there aren't many other models that are popping up to serve those buyers because, one, agents know that they can get a higher commission with the way that the traditional system continues to work. Or secondly, because there are all kinds of restrictions in place, like especially for self-represented buyers, to even access those funds that have been earmarked for a buyer's agent in an upfront offer of compensation.
Steven, do you want to add anything before I jump back in? Otherwise, I'll hog the show.
No, well, I'm a 99% D on the disc profile, so I've never sat this quiet ever. So
yeah, I saw you get Nancy.
Congratulations,
yeah.
Steven. Congratulations. We're very proud of you.
I am a listing agent in 13 states. I don't really work on the buyer side. So if you want to finish the buyer topic, I will have plenty to say on the listing side. So
let me jump in here with this. So when you say the word workaround, so this is like an example of my issue. There isn't actually a workaround. It's actually allowed in the settlement. So my point is, and this, you heard me say this to you before, when Debra uses the word workaround, the settlement specifically allows cooperative compensation to continue, which for everybody to hear, I don't like it, to be clear. I am against it. I've been very vocal, and so has Keith. We don't actually agree with it. But that's not a workaround. That's actually allowed by the plaintiff's lawyers because the plaintiff's lawyers wanted to get paid.
Yeah, and there's a dangerous track here, right? Where one of the most dangerous things that anybody can say is like, well, it's not illegal. It's not wrong, because you recognize, not you per se, but anybody who says that or takes that approach to business, they're recognizing that we're operating in a real legal gray area here that's ripe for future litigation. And you have to, there's all kinds of questions related to the attorneys and why they left it as gray as they did, and the way that that sets up future lawsuits. And I know that you're dialed into all of that. And I do think that there will be much more litigation that comes about as a result of this. But it raises the question of like, well, why then are you and some agents and brokers like you making the choice of saying, yeah, we understand what the spirit of the settlement was, and therefore we are not making upfront offers of compensation. We are not doing cooperative compensation and making recommendations that nobody should. And that's what I think Debra is actually calling, like, well, the people that are saying, no, we just continue on as business as usual, it is a workaround of sorts, even if we're just having to wait for the other shoe to drop with future litigation.
I think the issue is that there's a lot of gray area in the process, to your point. You know, there's nothing, so legally speaking, it would be antitrust to not allow a seller to offer an incentive to a buyer, to be clear. And as somebody who's been through this litigation, we've gone down all of these conversations. You cannot restrict a seller from offering any type of compensation to a buyer in the United States. That's literally against the whole concept of free trade. The issue becomes an intermediary in the process. So that's where I am incentivizing you or asking you, or I'm telling you I'm going to charge X and share a portion of that with Y. That's the question. So if a seller wanted to offer 2.5% commission as an incentive, they actually legally have a right to do that. The question, to your point, I think, Nick, what you're getting at, and I'm going to agree with you here, is the agent the one pushing that on the list side? Is the agent the one collecting it or saying, I'm going to charge you 5 and split 2.5? Those are very, very viable, real debates. But if a seller said, I want to offer an incentive to help the buyer purchase my house, whether it's a concession or an offer of compensation directly to the buyer brokerage, the seller technically has a legal right to do that. And the DOJ isn't going to weigh in on that, because if they start restricting what buyers and sellers can do in commerce, then you've got major antitrust issues. I guess the point I was making on the subject is, and I think maybe we'll wrap that part of it, is I think facts from a journalistic perspective are important, because 99% of the listeners and viewers aren't going to research it, and they won't understand things. And as somebody who's in the public, which Keith and I do this obviously as well, we're very, very careful about making sure that we're standing behind the words we use. And I believe journalistic integrity, where you have an audience of tens of millions of people listening, understand that there are nuance to these things. And a workaround sounds like illegal. Like when I say workaround, it's like I'm trying to skirt the law, right? Versus there are processes that weren't changed during the settlement that allow certain things to occur. Now, we can debate whether that's something that should be allowed or not. Probably won't find much debate on that here, because I hate cooperative compensation. And we made those decisions as a company, and many others did, to limit risk, because we knew that it's not good. And this is where I think we'll agree very clearly. I don't like it because I do think it props up compensation. I do. Mm-hmm. I think when an listing agent is sitting down and collecting an amount for themselves and another agent without having an offer submitted to them beforehand, you're literally telling the buyer's agent what your seller is willing to pay out.
Mhm.
It's stupid. It makes no logical sense to us at all.
Yep, we've been on record about that
Multiple
and
times.
There
Yeah.
are times at which it makes sense. Like what's frustrating to me is when
to offer compensation,
correct
from
Yeah.
seller to buyer brokerage direct, just for clarity.
Yeah, look, we're talking about, so there's journalistic integrity. I'll set that aside. I'm not a journalist, and I don't know this lady, and I just yammer into a microphone every once in a while. I am not a journalist. I'm a guy with a microphone, right? But to position this, I guess it feels like lazy logic to just say the entire industry is doing a workaround. It's just not true, right? It's just not accurate. It's not. It isn't. Like, why does it have to be a workaround? Why can't you mean to tell me when, and it's starting now, when the market shifts and it moves from a seller's market to a buyer's market, that won't influence how this is approached? Of course it will. There's so many different factors that go into this. So to just select the real estate agent is trying to skirt the rules and do something that isn't to the letter of the law, is that a component? Of course. Is it the only component? Of course not. And yet it seems to be the only one, or the one that gets mentioned the most and the most loudest.
I know we're trying to land this plane, but let me just put one objective point on it. So we all agree that the rules of the NAR settlement were explicit, that offers of compensation could not be made in the MLS. So any offer of compensation in the MLS, if an agent were to do that, that they are finding a workaround. Well, in the Southwestern Florida MLS, there are Sotheby's brokerage down there where they have in the private remarks a link to property information that you click on, and it has, then you enter the property address, and it's a separate site, but it gives all of the compensation offered to a co-broker on every listing for this entire brokerage.
We all agree that's wrong. But that doesn't mean everyone, that doesn't mean every agent who has decided to do an offer of compensation from the seller and is doing the link with and trying to go around the rules. It's
sure,
just,
but it is to say there are workarounds happening,
of course,
and taking full advantage of this gray area, and it is so difficult to actually enforce. I mean, it's one of the big frustrations here.
But I'd rather let's talk about that MLS in Florida versus what agents are doing. Right? It's just like it to me. It's not accurate.
The other point to make, I think this is important. I want to be clear, because you're not going to find disagreement that Keith and I are like, we think that shit's stupid, and like, why? It's just not that complicated. But and I know, Stephen, this is where I'll push you to in a second. It has a lot to do with the lack of leadership and education. But what I wanted to be very clear about is it also takes time. These things don't happen overnight because of the structure of this industry and the way that it's set up, where you've got so many people, 90% of them are independent contractors, or probably more at this point, and are just, they don't even pay attention to what the hell's being sent to them half the time. I mean, we were talking to agents 6 months after the settlement occurred that didn't even know there was a settlement. And the point behind that is, unfortunately, those people come in to do a real estate transaction once a year because their friend wants to sell a house, and then the rules change. And maybe this, Stephen, this is a good segue for you. Like, let's dive into that. Like, I mean, there is this issue of agent supervision, brokers leading their people, like too many damn realtors, which I think we could probably all agree on. Like, what's your jump in here?
Man, I want to go back because I do
go fine, jump in. Yeah.
So first of all, James, I did not know who you were. If I did, you were just like, maybe you were connected on LinkedIn. I did not know your podcast, you guys, before that day, just so you know that.
Great.
But that day, couple things on my end. I did not know Nick that day either. I met all of you guys because of that one day. But what has happened is the night before, I'm quiet. I'm a consumer centric. I have been coached that way. I've had my mind. I'm strategy of preeminence, blue ocean strategy. I am a visionary, strategic person more than I am a realtor. So I study consumer behavior, know what they want more than the average agent. And I've been quiet. I take my attacks and I just keep doing my thing, right? Number 3 agent in America for the 3rd year in a row. This will be my 4th year. We do thousands of deals. And I used to be a traditional agent, used to be the #1 Remax agent in the country in Real Trends. I've done thousands of rentals,
Yeah.
used to be a vice president. So when people try to stick you into a discount broker, that's another topic because I'm not that guy.
Right.
We're offering choices. But what triggered me was Compass when they came out and I started seeing some of the responses, and then I responded, and one guy responded back going, what's wrong, Steve? You don't agree with freedom and consumer choice? And I was like, oh, shoot, here we go. Gloves off, right? Because I'm the last agent anyone should be talking about consumer. I am pretty much the most consumer centric ever. And they did that and they brought up freedom and they're trying. And I'm like, this is not that. Like, I'm okay if a domestic violence person doesn't want a house on the MLS. I'm okay if a multi-billionaire or millionaire wants to private. That's what it's for. So I'm not like completely against that. But when you start taking it as a business model, and you're saying you're not, you're saying it's for consumer choice, then you're creating a business model around it. And then we see their social media posts now. Now it's an exclusive private and all this and get advantage of it. That made it. Then the next step, my old coach, I don't know if I want to give names, but my old coach, coached off the deep end. Like his comments now, he no longer, he was a great coach, great person, but he has changed. And all he does to his 100,000 followers is bitch about the journalist and bitch about the attorneys. He doesn't even say any of it was even valid. Like there was some valid points in the lawsuit somewhere. It is all, every time he speaks to these 100,000 agents, he is making them dumber. I'm sorry, because nothing he says makes, he's not even acknowledging. So that was it. You happened to jump in there that day and I saw yours for the first, like I saw your response and then I'm like, I can't be quiet anymore because now we're almost a year after the lawsuit. Nothing has really changed. Me and Nick talked about this when we met after this and we were like, people like regular agents may have been scared, a little scared when it happened, or a lot scared. We saw that on social media. Me and Nick and folks like us who were looking at more for the consumer's point of view, we thought there was hope. We had hope. We were like, oh shit, man, maybe this is the time. Finally, the industry is going to change and get a little more consumer centric. And it just didn't. So when I heard you do that, I didn't know your background. You're way more, I've learned about you since then, and you are way more on the consumer side. You have different views. I kind of threw you in a category that day.
Yeah, totally fine. Yeah.
I had a bad day.
Hey,
we all do.
We all do. And these people. And then I just realized this is not going in the direction that the consumer needs.
So tell us about that. So go deep. You use the words consumer centric a lot, and everybody does to some degree. What does that mean to you? Yeah. So to me, I'll take this back the easiest because we don't have this scripted. So I'm just going off the top of my head. Something pretty technical that most people won't know. Like strategy of preeminence is basically about being a trusted advisor. So is fiduciary duty. Same thing, right? We have an obligation above our own. And I don't think agents have been trained on what that really means. We work around, like one of the biggest workarounds in this business is commissions are negotiable. Yeah, that's the law. Commissions are negotiable. But if you talk to consumers that led to that lawsuit, they would talk to 9 out of 10 agents, and those agents have been trained by their brokerage, by coaches, to keep their value up, know your worth. Use little disparaging comments like, oh, discount broker. Oh, he's a discount broker. Like, I have a pretty detailed resume. To just throw it off as a discount broker or you get what you pay for. One of my most hated terms ever. If I have closed 10,000 deals and I want to do a 1% listing because my model's better, I can I've got that track. I've got 30 people who work for me. If that's the case and you're a brand new agent who just got their license and you're charging 6%, you're not getting what you pay for, period. It's not true. So to your point, just so I want to double click on that real quick. Yeah. So to your point, a new agent goes into a brokerage. I'm going to set this up. So a new agent goes into a brokerage. They're brand new. They were trained by somebody inside the organization, and they're going out there asking for the same compensation rate as the top producer in the office. That's what you're saying is essentially part of a problem, correct? Correct. Okay. And not educate, but I'm very much consumer education. I want the consumer. We don't tell the consumer that everybody is out to get as much money as they want on that side of it. I have
since 2019 an actual business model framework. Nobody's ever seen it yet. We're about to, because of this, what has happened. Nick's seen it. I have the consumer in the middle, and I offer options from cash offers to limp for sale by owners, helping 2,500 for sale by owners clients last year sell on the MLS. To full service virtual, which I have not left the house for a client in 5 years since the pandemic. We all went virtual. It worked. I got licensed in 8 more states because I'm like, hey, if it's virtual, I don't just need to be in Illinois. I got licensed in 8 more states, kept it going, went a different direction. And then we, like last year, we did 62 referrals, or the year before, 62 referrals that year, because I know I'm not the best person to do full service in a house anymore, right? Because
so is it optionality is what you're saying is literally sitting down with the client and
yes. So I offer more choices, more open options. And I when I hear all this happening, it's because I don't think the consumers know. So and agents are very quick to say, well, commissions have always been negotiable. Consumers know that they have options. That's once again a gray area, because if the trusted person they believe is being told that those options suck, or it's a discount broker, or you get what you pay for, I don't see that that's telling somebody they really do have options.
Do you think are you saying that? Yeah.
Do you expect an agent to go on a listing presentation and present their model and yours?
No, but I don't expect them to lie.
What's the lying part?
Of course not. Yeah. What's the lying part?
You get 30% more based on something, or they'll use some statistics that aren't based in facts.
Well, no one should lie on a listing presentation. We can agree with that.
There you go.
Yeah,
so
of course.
How would you, either anybody on here if somebody wanted to sell for sale by owner, how would you address it? Or how do you think most agents address it in the country?
Most of them probably aren't very skilled at answering that question. Correct. And would probably just avoid it.
Or they disparage you. They'll be like, well, you get what they're trained by coaches and brokers.
Sure. Explaining to someone that, I mean, I don't want to get I'm a high D too, so this could get weird, but
that's okay.
I don't want us to start word parsing, because I feel like that isn't maybe the best conversation, but me explaining to someone that doing a for sale by owner is harder than hiring an agent and expressing to them how it's harder isn't disparaging it. I'm not saying it is harder. If someone wants to do all the things that an agent does, they could do a for sale by owner, but the learning curve is steep, and it's going to take a tremendous amount of effort on your part. Yep. But if you want to go that route, you could save the commission. Is that something you'd like to do, Mr. or Mrs. Seller? That's not disparaging you.
But they don't talk like that. You talk like that because you're on a podcast. They don't.
No, I talk like that because I talk like that. But but why? What are they saying that's disparaging?
Is it the fact they're trying to talk them out of it? Is that where you're headed with? It's your home's going to statistically sell for less if you don't have an agent with it? Is that?
Well, they use that all the time, and that's not true too, because I sell 2,500 homes a year that way, and I'm considered an agent in those stats, right? And I get multiple offers, and I have, probably, I don't want to throw numbers up, $100 million in savings, and I'm one agent. Sure. Right.
Well, let me ask you this. I want to get to a brass tacks comment. So I think is a fair question. So Redfin was founded in 2005. Yeah. I'm close. Whatever. Close. Point's the same. It's been around a while. They ran out with, I believe the model was 1.5%. Keith, am I right? 1.5%.
It bounced around, so it depends on the time. Yeah, but yes.
Chicago, when I started in 2017, it was like a $3,500 flat fee listing or 1%.
Point's the same. We're agreeing that they had a model that was.
Yeah, and actually, that's how I started. That's how I started, because at 2017, you're a 47-year-old guy. I don't have a database. I don't have past clients.
Yeah,
I don't want to do open houses and door knock like everyone's telling me to do. And how do you stay competitive when there's already agents who've been doing it for 25 years?
Fine. We're in agreement.
Yeah. We're in agreement. They were making a move. So I quickly saw what they were doing. I actually bought the Matterport camera, and we started Matterporting. So first year we did 16 deals. The next year, 119, doing this $3,000, $3,500 model. one month I sold 43 homes. We made a lot of money, right? So in that model, so that works.
But what my question is this though, Stephen. So you look at like I've been around the business a really long time, so I have weird stats in my head. So I apologize. Help You Sell was founded in 1976.
Yep.
Fee for service model.
Yep.
Assist to Sell, I want to say was 1984, right around there. Fee for service model.
Yep.
They grew
Bricks.
quite.
Purple Bricks came
Bricks,
in, went out.
Foxtons came over from Europe. There's been these models that have come out and have been here. And to be clear, Help You Sell and Assist to Sell were very large companies for a long period of time. They weren't small. They had franchise locations all over the U.S. They're very small now, but they weren't at the time. And this isn't a loaded question. I'm just asking. No, then you had Redfin come out had massive amounts of money thrown at this. By the way, best brokerage website, period. Like just amazing. Why haven't these things caught on then with consumers? It's not like it's not due to lack of awareness. I know what he's going to say.
He's going to say the agents, right?
No. And I hear that. And even when they collapse, you hear the disparaging comments like, I told you that wasn't going to work. And all the agents jump on it because I've seen that, especially like a Purple Bricks and all of that. But I think those don't work because they're going out raising capital, raising hundreds of millions of dollars before they even make.
But what about Help You Sell and Assist to Sell? They weren't the same capital raise.
Yeah, I mean, there are options out there. I don't believe the consumer knows when the consumer only focuses on selling a house every 7 years, it's just like anything else in life. We only see the pink car when we're looking for the pink car. It's the type of thing that I had an example that I've shared before that a gentleman in Naperville, Illinois here was selling a house. He got the family discount through Keller Williams of 5.5%. And he was upset at his wife because it was his brother-in-law. And he found out I sold it for $3,000. And he literally asked me, and he looked at his wife. I was in the room and looked at his wife and he goes, I told you, because his house sold in 4 days. He got the family discount of 5.5%. And I said, well, why wouldn't you use somebody like Redfin or something like that? He goes, I didn't know. He goes, I did not know this existed. He goes, I don't think a lot of people know. And once I heard that was probably 2018.
You're actually going to make a point here for me. So I do this in my keynotes. I'm going to give you a couple stats that I found interesting. So I've been studying this myself, just going like, why are things the way they are? Why does Keith Robinson, why does he DoorDash food, which costs as much as the food itself?
40% more. Yeah.
And right. So I was going to share this stat because I started to study this because I'm really interested in psychology. And if you think about it, in the 1960s, dual income households was around 30% in the United States. And today it's about 60. If you think about why, it's because everything is so goddamn expensive in this country. You have to have two incomes to live anymore to do anything, right? And I think about my own life, and I think about my wife's got a career and I have a career and we have a 4-year-old terrorist. And I say that lovingly because I do love my daughter, but like the point is, I think people wake up in this country and they go, I've got so much shit to do today that I just want to pay someone to just take care of it all. And I think that one of the reasons why these companies, real estate companies, and Keith was labeling a few, there's many of them if you go through time, have come over with flat fee models. Purple Bricks was, I think, $3,995 for you to do it. They had, I don't even know, it was like $100 million worth of capital thrown at it. They're very popular, by the way, in Europe. Although I think they just went bankrupt, actually, even in Europe. But they were popular in Europe, came over, didn't work here. So I believe, it's just my own speculation. Consumers, it's not necessarily about the cost as much as the value they get from it. And I think a lot of Americans, majority of Americans, are so overwhelmed with just life. And they're like, I just want somebody to take care of this for me. Am I off?
No, I just want choice. There are millions and millions of people who don't understand. They're the minority. The majority is what you just said. Mm-hmm. And I am a full service agent too. I do full service stuff. Mm-hmm. So
you just offer lots of options.
I have options. I'm not trying to kill the industry, which a lot of people think we are. And we get those threats and all that. That's a different story.
Yeah, I know.
But in regards to that, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
We were just talking about the options. You're talking about optionality and people being educated. With Nick
before too. The thing I know more than most, because I do offer options, and I always have since I started, is high majority of the time, they never take the lower option.
Right.
If I could only convince other agents this, if you go in there with options, I'm the first. The stats show whatever it is, 81. Well, you'll know James better than me, but I think 81% hire the first agent they make contact with. Well, I'm there. I got there because I'm offering options. I'm providing options. Now it's more on Zoom calls and online than anything else. I only had two. I probably did 70 listing appointments in 2018 or something. Two of them. I still remember the two people who chose the low option after they made me go to the house.
Yeah.
I get them on the phone first. And I said, I have these options, but these options, I don't come out to your house.
So your issue is that there's not optionality being given based upon circumstance of what the person might need from the individual. Is that, I'm trying to boil this down because I got a couple points to get through.
I 100% believe we would have never had NAR lawsuits if commissions were really negotiable and if agents were really providing transparency on what the options are. That doesn't mean they need to promote them to my flat fee thing or something, but why did the lawsuit happen in the first place? Now, let me go back because James, you'll know this. The first lawsuit was 2020. Well, there was a lawsuit in 2020 or 2005 when NAR was trying to block limited service.
Correct. And it was a settlement they had with the DOJ at that time.
And on that settlement, it was specifically to bring down commissions. It says that I believe in the actual case after the settlement. And we're here 20 years later.
Yeah.
And I've got 2,200 listings as we talk right now. I take calls all day. Yeah. How in the world, when I take calls, 95% of all agents go, I've never heard of this before. Yeah. I've never heard of this. Like limited. How the one woman just last week said, how long has this been going on? And I'm like,
but let me ask you this, and then we'll pin it here because I want to get back to Nick on some other stuff just for time's sake. I guess my question is the whole concept of America and capitalism and freedom. I'm using other people's words against them now. So using the word freedom.
Don't tell Steven he's not for freedom. He's going to get pissed. He's going to get pissed.
But the point I was making was, don't people get to choose what business model they want to run? And if they don't want to offer, if they want to charge a lower fee or not, that's up to them to choose to do that?
Yes, but I'm going to go a different direction. Every industry has moved forward. Every industry, like travel industry has moved forward, right? We used to have walk. We used to have horses. We used to have cars. Then we went to airplanes.
Oh, I still have horses, Stephen.
We are still working we can land things on Mars remotely and move stuff, but yet the average traditional agent in brokerage is still telling them to go to the kitchen table and interview 3 agents who like, and trust. No, like, and trust in my mind is bullshit.
Yeah,
because I could have my kid go into a surgery. I'm going to want to hire the best surgeon. I don't care if I don't care if he's a jerk. I want the best surgeon for my kid. It's these words we use. Commissions are negotiable. No, like, and trust. This is what keeps the industry doing an average of 3 deals a year, 4 deals a year, because brokerages need more people doing deals. NAR needs 1.6 million people paying dues, and only 71% of them are closing a deal.
I hear you. All right, let me pin this and go to Nick real quick. So you're talking about barriers facing, this kind of ties in, self-represented buyers and sellers. So give us some background on that. Like, where are your thoughts on this? I know you have opinions like the industry is stopping this from happening as well to some degree. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking with self-represented buyers all over the country that they're looking for option. They feel like they're competent and with a bit of education, they can represent themselves. So they'll call a listing agent to say, hey, I've gotten my pre-approval letter. I'm serious about this. I've done my research. I want to tour this home. And the listing agent will kind of wall up and be like, well, I don't do dual agency. I'm like, well, that's fine. I'm an unrepresented buyer. Just show me the house. Well, let me connect you with a buyer's agent in my office. No, I don't want a buyer's agent. Okay, well then I'm going to need you to sign a buyer agency agreement with me, even though it's just for this one home. It's like listing agents, whether they're playing dumb or they actually just are unaware of the fact that they can treat a self-represented buyer as a customer. And in fact, they have a duty to their seller to provide access to any qualified buyer to the home and to show them customer service to help sell that home. That's where a lot of unrepresented buyers are getting the runaround from agents. And they kind of get left out in the cold in these conversations, because then even if an agent is willing to show them the house, we have the whole conversation about compensation. And when there are still cooperative compensation agreements, the way that those are written, many times the self-represented buyer does not have access to those funds that have been earmarked for a buyer's agent. So the listing agent will tell that unrepresented buyer, sure, you can represent yourself, but there's no savings to you or to my seller. I'm just going to double end the deal. And that is a anti-competitive system if I've ever come across one. When you as a home buyer or a consumer want to forego a professional service and take something on yourself, there should be at least the opportunity to realize some financial savings in doing so.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, especially.
For sure.
Stephen, you were shaking your head like you weren't in agreement on something he said, or did I misinterpret that?
Yeah, something triggered real quick. So transactional services, limited services went into effect back in like 2005. Correct me, James, you're going to be way more educated than me on this. But transaction services, alternative services, I believe, were written into most real estate laws from day one. It's just nobody practiced that. So it's been around for 60 years, but we didn't have technology back then to make it more normal, I guess. Limited service went in when states were trying to kind of protect, kind of put some limits around the professionalism and kind of limit the limited service transaction brokerages, in my opinion. But it's a test question on every exam in the country, but then it never teaches it. No coach teaches it. No broker really teaches what it is. In my opinion, they'll focus more how to keep your commissions high and talk about knowing your worth and your value, but we've never educated the traditional agent on the options. They don't even know. So how can they educate their consumer in a fiduciary duty if they don't know? And the only reason I know this is because of the amount of listings we take,
right?
The amount of calls that agents call me and they get mad that it's limited service, or they argue with me. It's against the law for me to call the seller directly. I'm like, whose law? Like, my broker told me.
Hey, Stephen, let me ask you something real quick. This is a genuine question. My legal brain is going here.
Sure.
If you had an unrepresented buyer looking to buy the property, and you had another buyer, equal offers are the same, one's represented, one is not represented, does your risk hat go up in representing your seller?
So I'm a limited service, and we don't work both sides. We don't.
But I'm referring to, you're not going to represent the buyer, to be clear.
No. Yeah.
You've got two buyers, one represented by a good agent. Let's just get real specific.
Yeah.
One that's unrepresented. I'm not leading this. I'm actually asking this question because we obviously, Keith and I don't sell real estate anymore either. So are you going to tell your seller about any type of potential risks based upon the different type of buyer criteria coming in? Do you feel like you have a responsibility to tell them about potential risks of having an unrepresented buyer versus a buyer represented by somebody who understands real estate every day?
Yeah. So most of the time it doesn't come into effect because I'm limited service, but we do get a lot of unrepresented. With my full service clients, probably. I mean, I'm just going to show the offers as they are.
Okay.
I'm thinking my full service clients like I have now.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Okay. I mean, so you just look at the terms, you don't care who it is.
And I just present it. I don't really, I give my expertise, but really it's their decision. I'm just trying to.
So you don't think there's any increased risk by working with an unrepresented buyer?
Oh, increased risk. I don't know. Maybe.
I mean.
But I know but because I lean towards consumer choice.
Sure. But what are the downsides?
Yeah,
like
there's
consumer choice. Hold on, let me finish. Consumer choice means explaining the ramifications of the choice to the consumer, right?
Right. So
you can't just look at the terms of the offer. You've also got to explain the difference between an unrepresented buyer and a represented buyer.
Oh boy, I don't know now. Now I'm seeing it opposite of you.
Why?
But like it that way. Yeah, because if it's allowed by law, I want everything that's allowed by the law in the United States. I need the interpretation of real estate agents and their expertise on their limited knowledge to not come into the game. Because too many agents, they won't even acknowledge that limited service is valid in the U.S. or they'll claim that it's illegal. It's not. So anything that's
I'm not saying any
law,
of that. I'm just saying I don't have the stats. I'm sure I could go find them, or maybe you know them. But my intuition is that an unrepresented buyer falls out of contract with more frequency than a represented buyer.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, right.
I don't know that level of detail.
But that would be a piece I would need to know to advise my client, right? Like there is a difference between an unrepresented buyer and a represented buyer. No?
I think that's
we're starting to get into a piece where you're
I think it's a fair question.
Yeah, I'm actually
my legal brain goes if there's an increased potential risk. I'm not, by the way, Nick, going against. I'm just, my brain's going. If there is an increased potential risk of further litigation by having somebody who may not understand things as well as somebody else, do I have a responsibility to tell my seller that? My brain goes, yes. There is a potential risk of having somebody who is not doing this on a daily basis, doing something wrong. I don't know. And it may not even be doing something wrong. They may not have interpreted something correctly and they decide to sue because they didn't understand something.
This is a can of worms.
I don't think that your issue isn't so much whether they're represented or unrepresented, because as we all know, most real estate agents, they don't do that many transactions. We have already talked about how they're not paying attention to what's happening in the industry. They're representing a friend or a family member a couple of times a year. And so there's incredible risk in having this part-timer pseudo agent that's representing you versus an unrepresented buyer who has taken a ton of time to educate themselves, to understand the process, to hire a real estate attorney that's on their side. I mean, the kind of quality of unrepresented buyer versus the kind of quality of the representation that the buyer is getting, that's really, I think, what the question is. We can't just make a blanket statement of
it's totally fair. Sure.
Just because you're
totally
represented
fair.
means you're a safer buyer.
Look, I think there absolutely could be some unrepresented buyers who could perform at a higher level than a represented buyer. I agree with that.
But here, let me put highlight what I think kind of an issue that we've been dancing around is, and that is a legal term, and it's steering, and it's where we make these blanket sort of statements, or in the industry, agents make these sort of blanket statements in order to steer their clients' decisions. This is really what a big issue with the clear cooperation policy that we're talking about with Compass and how listing agents present. Like
no argument there.
But it happens also then when a listing agent sits down and talks with a seller about the risks of working with an unrepresented buyer. Well, based on what? And what is the agent doing in their conversation with, because they're not a neutral party in that discussion. It's a bad thing for agents if more buyers become unrepresented and choose to go that option. That takes away potentially half of all potential clients if everybody becomes an unrepresented buyer. So can you really trust your listing agent, who also works as a buyer's agent, to give you impartial advice about the risks of working with an unrepresented buyer? And it happens when we're talking about working with limited service brokers or going FSBO or any of that as well. Like, can you really look to an agent to give you that kind of impartial fiduciary advice that you would?
So you're saying an agent's incapable of doing that?
I am saying that
I'm saying that doesn't happen.
Financially,
maybe some top agents, sure, they get it. But here's an example, Keith. So Keith, if you're an agent, you're charging 6% because that's just what you're charging. $400,000 home. I'm coming in at $3,000 flat fee.
Mm-hmm.
I can use the same photographer you use. I'm on the same MLS you use.
Sure.
I may have more experience than you. I may have better marketing than you. I may have a better team than you. The only thing I didn't do is walk in the house. Are you telling each seller that there's, to give them all options, that there might be another option that's cheaper that could get the same thing accomplished, bring in the same buyer? We don't. But that's what I look at, that buyer question that you just said. Like,
are you giving all of your sellers my business card?
No, but are you giving them all the options?
Sure. I mean, if they want,
it's easy to tell them that they have, because I don't do full service. So of course I would refer them out. If you want me to refer we should partner and we should do that, because I could give you a bunch of deals. But that's, I get it. But when we come back to what James said earlier, where we live in capitalist, this is different. This is
my point.
We are steering this industry as a whole and the leadership in this industry.
But let's take it. So
commissions high.
So should every agent, when they go on a listing presentation, like I believe every agent should say, have you thought about keeping the home as a rental? Right.
Yep.
Because I believe in investing in residential real estate, holding it as a hard asset.
Yep.
And someone should consider that.
Sure.
Now, does every agent do that? No. Does that mean that they're a terrible agent, or that they're skirting the laws, or that they're like, I'm trying to pick one that's less charged.
No,
right?
I gotcha. How do we, so a couple of weeks ago, and you guys saw this online if you were watching me, I started getting really vocal, is I've decided, I created OnAgent to be an agent accelerator. And I literally have given up trying to convince agents that there's a different way to look at the business, because it's systemic. It's built in. I can't change them. So now I've changed literally on the fly to consumer focused. And we're going to start just educating consumers. Yes, you've had options. Yes, commissions have been negotiable for 70 years or whatever it is. Because I can't get through to the agents. They all follow what their broker says. They all follow what the coaches are saying. And some brokerages and some coaches are not in touch what consumers want. They don't want Blockbuster anymore. They don't want to go into the store into aisle 5. Some do. Majority do. But there's millions of people who are looking for Netflix.
But nothing's stopping you from doing that. Nothing's been stopping anybody from creating that model over the past 25 years. Why all of a sudden? I'm not disagreeing with you, by the way, Stephen.
Well. We're doing okay. We do that model well.
But
so
nothing
I don't need
has
everybody to come there.
But nothing has stopped any company from putting that model online.
I think that this is where
it's not about
or educating consumers about that.
Yeah, but how do
or running ad campaigns or explaining that these things are different. all I'm saying is that I'm not denying that there's inherent things that have been taught by companies, and companies tend to follow each other. And I'm not arguing any of that. Right. I'm just saying, like, there's nothing that is prohibiting you 10 years ago from creating a consumer-centric brokerage that lays out 10 options, and you getting a venture-backed company with $10 million to give you the capital to run TV ad campaigns.
Why has every other licensed industry, travel agencies, stockbrokers, insurance, you can keep going on, they have had some form of progress, meaning towards
because they were disrupted.
Models.
Because they were disrupted.
Why is this industry not disrupted?
I would argue it is. Like, I would actually tell you that you're about to watch the single largest disruption you've ever seen in residential real estate.
I'm hoping to be a part of that.
I think that
you are. You are part of that.
You will be,
which is good. Like, I like competition.
But
I think it's great.
For 30, like, we've been fighting this thing.
Yeah, but I'll counter this. I'm with you. I'm actually agreeing with you. By the way, I'm just playing devil's advocate partially because there needs to be debate here.
Yeah.
Our industry has followed a similar model for a long time. There have been countless models to try and disrupt it, which haven't gotten through. We can question it was the system. We can question it didn't work. Consumers didn't want it. It's all debatable.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that I believe strongly that you're going to see disruption, especially with Rocket's acquisition of Mr. Cooper and things. But that's a whole other debate. But I would point out one thing, that the legal industry hasn't changed. It's one of the most corrupt systems in the United States.
That is. I agree with you.
And it hasn't changed. It's all hourly. The lawyers can do what they want. They can sue for anything. You have to pay to defend it. We're off the American rule versus the English rule of law. You want to talk about disruption? That industry needs to be disrupted.
For sure.
LegalZoom tried to come out and do it. Didn't happen. My point is, like, it usually, if you look at disruption in an industry, and I'm going to use your Blockbuster example, it changed because a company came in and figured out a better way to attract the consumer to do something different than what they wanted to do after work on a Friday and go sit in line at Blockbuster and grab your gummies on the way out. not the marijuana ones for people. This is the way it was a long time ago, gummies. You guys were all thinking it, and I said it. Everybody went down that road. So my point is,
minded one that was thinking of the dots.
Yeah, the dots. That's what I was thinking. The dots.
There you go.
The point was, it took a company to figure out a different mousetrap for the consumer that got the consumer to want to do it. And all I'm saying is nothing is prohibiting somebody from coming in and offering a system like you're
right.
Well, and I have one other point.
Yeah, that's happening now. I mean, like we've taken 8,000 listings in a year, and there's people who've taken more. We got a guy who just closed 7,700 deals in Texas in the Guinness Book of World Records. There's people doing it, but it's amazing. The agents don't know that exists. I will get on calls with agents and show them, and they've never heard of it. Like nobody even knows that. And that's part of, I think, what me and Nick are getting into is it's just so protected of those alternatives within the industry, within the bubble of real estate.
Yeah.
Real estate people talk to real estate people. They get coached by real estate. And everyone's in this bubble.
I know, but so do
the consumers over here.
I know, but so does insurance, and so does the lawyers. And that's how
I want to look your examples, which are good ones. I'm not saying they're bad ones, but Blockbuster, renting a movie isn't the same as buying a house, right? Insurance is seen as a commodity. I'm only really shopping on price because if I get in a wreck, I assume all the services are the same. Travel agent, to me, is a good comp. But if you go look at what's happening with travel agents, no one is using travel agents for their Southwest flight, for an hour Southwest flight to go see their kid in college or whatever. They're doing that themselves. But people are using travel agents again and paying a premium for honeymoons, the trip to Europe, right? So the bigger decision, human beings tend to, whether it's a flaw in our wiring as creatures or the way we've evolved or whatever, but human beings for big decisions tend to want to lean into another human being, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked with enough buyer agents now to believe, and I said this a few months ago, but that in 5 years, buyer agents will be about as common as travel agents. That they will still exist to serve very particular niche markets, but the inefficiency of having a buyer's agent, especially one that gets paid 2 to 3% on the sale of a house, the younger consumers that are used to using online platforms and with the advent of AI technologies and everything that can do for you. And when you already have an agent who is part of the deal that is there to open the door and show you the house, to tell you the facts and details about it, I believe that everything we're talking about, that's where the industry is headed, that there is going to be significant disruption here. What I'm saying is right here, right now, consumers should have a fair shake. And when people that are trying to push the ball forward are, so we joked about it at the very beginning of like, I'm real popular in my local association right now, all the realtors in my area, they love me and they love what I'm doing. The agent teaching people how to buy homes without an agent. But and I expect that there's going to be a target on your back when you're trying to be the person disrupting. But I will take that target.
There shouldn't be. There shouldn't be, though. What I am
not okay with is when the consumer gets targeted because they're trying to pursue a legitimate option.
Totally agree.
That's what I'm seeing happening to self-represented buyers is they're saying, hey, I'm interested in doing this. I am educating myself. I am trying to participate in a new way that is should bring me some financial benefit, should give me a competitive advantage. And they are being blocked from participation in the market. And that is where I've had it. Like, it is not okay.
And I agree with you.
I agree with you too.
I agree with
for sure.
every bit of that. And we should probably wrap because
that's going to be we're going to wrap on this.
Yeah, we're probably a 60. We're over time. But anybody listening, go ahead and jump in the comments and tell people that you think I'm an idiot and Nick and Steven are geniuses. But I do think that this has been a fun conversation. It has. I think.
And we need to have more of these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, and I don't think we're light years apart, right? I personally have always I love competition. I'm all for it.
Yeah, well,
I love it. Like, if I get my ass beat, then I've got to try to figure out how to do it different or better. Like, competition will solve this. So both of you keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. And if you kick the establishment's ass, you will capture market share and the rest of them will catch up. And if you don't, then, you know, you might have to pivot and work on scripts and dialogues like, would you like fries with that or something? But you guys will figure it out, right? Like, I like competition. I like that you're in the space doing it, because that's the only way we all get better.
Yeah. And I know me and Nick appreciate even being asked to come on showed. And James, honestly, like I said, I didn't know you before, but as I felt bad because I jumped on you.
Not at all, man.
And I'm like, oh, wait, he's closer to me than these other
Trust
people
me,
who are off the charts. So
I am a firebrand in the industry. People love to have me speak, so I'll say things that most people are thinking or not, and I'm not afraid to push back, and I'm not afraid to take it too. We want this kind of conversation. I'm with Keith. We're very aligned on things, so I want you guys to keep doing what you're doing. It's going to cause everybody to be better. It causes, look, we run a big, obviously, national company. We're looking at these things going, how do we make our people better? And we do align on one thing, by the way. This is 100%. We are very, very, very much looking at how to protect the consumer. I think you both know I'm very vocal about that.
Yep.
Making sure consumers are absolutely the North Star. Is it perfect? No. Is every agent going to do it right? No. That's unfortunately how the system works in almost any industry. But we want you guys to do what you're doing, and I appreciate the dialogue. We'll probably have you back on to talk about some other subjects and have a debate. And my point is, if people have a problem with it, they can go turn the channel, because we're going to keep bringing on lots of interesting people to have interesting conversations. So,
absolutely,
gentlemen, we appreciate you being here very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You don't want to let Keith down, do you? Hit subscribe, and not only will you never miss an episode of this podcast, but you'll also never make Keith sad. He's easily entertained.